All right, let's talk about React. You've definitely heard of it, right? It's one of the biggest names out there for building modern websites. But maybe you've also been a little intimidated by it. Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to break down the big ideas behind React so you can finally understand what all the fuss is about. Let's get into it.
First things first, let's start with a question. Why is it actually so hard to build a website that's dynamic? One that changes and responds to you in real time? Think about your social media feed just magically updating, or pinching and zooming on an interactive map. Making that stuff feel smooth and seamless is a huge technical challenge, and that's the exact problem React was created to solve.
To really get why React was such a game changer, we have to kind of step back in time and look at the old way of doing things. Before tools like React showed up, developers were really wrestling with some serious headaches trying to build complex, interactive websites.
The heart of the problem was something called the DOM. That's the Document Object Model. The easiest way to think about the DOM is as the live blueprint of a web page. It's the structure. And back in the day, if you wanted to change anything, like anything at all, you had to write code that would manually reach into this blueprint and change it piece by piece.
And here's the thing. Directly changing that real DOM is what we call expensive. It makes the browser do a ton of work, and that makes your website feel slow and clunky. Plus, as your app got bigger, trying to manage all these manual changes just became this tangled up mess of code. It was super easy to make mistakes and create all kinds of frustrating bugs.
So, what was React's big idea? It basically said, stop thinking about your website as one giant single document. Instead, start thinking about it as a collection of reusable components. The best analogy? Building with Lego bricks.
And a component is just that, a self-contained, independent piece of your user interface. It could be something small like a button or a search bar, or even something much bigger like a whole user profile card. Each little brick manages its own stuff, its own logic, its own look, and then you can just snap them together to build something way more complex.
Now, to make building these components feel really intuitive, React uses something called JSX. Don't worry, JSX isn't a whole new programming language you have to learn. It's really just syntactic sugar. It's a handy feature that lets you write what looks exactly like HTML, but right inside of your JavaScript code. It just makes everything so much easier to read.
For instance, just look at this line of code. It looks just like a normal HTML heading, right? But since we're actually in JavaScript, we can use those curly braces to pop in dynamic data or logic. It's really the best of both worlds.
Okay, so we've got our reusable Lego bricks. That's cool. But how do we make them do things? How do we give them data and make them interactive? Well, this brings us to two of the most important concepts in all of React.
First up, we have props, which is short for properties. Think of props like instructions you give to a Lego brick. It's how a parent component passes information down to one of its children. So a user profile component might get a username prop so it knows whose information to show. And the key thing to remember is that props are read-only. They only flow one way, from top to bottom.
And the second concept is state. So if props are data passed into a component, state is that component's own personal memory. It's information that the component itself manages, and it can change over time. Things like, is this drop-down menu open? Or what text has the user typed into this search box? That's all state.
So let's just boil it down. Props are for passing data down from a parent to a child. State is for managing data that's private to one component and changes over time, usually because of something the user did. Honestly, getting this difference is one of the biggest hurdles when you're starting out, but it's absolutely key.
And this is where the magic happens. When a component state changes, let's say you click a like button, you don't go in and manually change what's on the screen. No, you just update the state using a special function. And React sees that change, and it automatically and super efficiently redraws that part of the screen to show the new information.
But hang on a second. I just told you that changing the DOM is slow and inefficient. So how is React able to re-render stuff all the time and still be so fast? Well, this brings us to React's secret weapon, the virtual DOM. This is what ties it all together.
The virtual DOM is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a copy, a lightweight representation of the real browser DOM. But here's the key. It exists only in memory, in JavaScript. And that means working with it is incredibly, incredibly fast.
I mean, the performance difference is just night and day.
Changing the real DOM is like trying to rearrange all the heavy furniture in a room. It's slow, it's a lot of effort. But changing the virtual DOM, that's like sketching out a new floor plan on a piece of paper. It's blazing fast.
So here's how React puts this to work. When state changes, React first builds a new snapshot of its super fast virtual DOM. Then, and this is the clever part, it compares the new version to the old version and figures out the absolute smallest change possible to make them match. Only then does it go and touch the slow, real DOM, and it only makes that one tiny specific update. This whole process is called reconciliation, and it's the secret to React's amazing performance.
So what we've just covered, components, props, state, and the virtual DOM, that's really the heart and soul of React. But it's good to know that this is just a beginning. React is at the center of this huge, powerful ecosystem of other tools that build on these core ideas. Once you get comfortable with the basics, you'll probably want to check out things like hooks, which are a newer way to handle state, or React Router, which helps you build applications with multiple pages. And for really big apps, you might look into something like Redux for managing state across the whole application.
But look, if you only take one thing away from all of this, let it be this quote. React's philosophy is declarative. That means you don't tell it how to do things step by step. You just describe what you want the user interface to look like based on the current state. And then you trust React to figure out the best, most efficient way to make it happen.
So there you have it. We went from the old, messy way of building for the web to React's elegant solution with components, state, props, and the virtual DOM. We've kind of pulled back the curtain on the magic. So now that you understand the why and the how behind it all, the only real question left is, what are you going to build?